Hi, I'm Ujjvala. I am from Bangalore. Well, not exactly, but I have grown up mostly in Bangalore. I'm an architect. I finished my graduation at CEPT University last year, and I'm here now, not practicing as an architect. At CEPT, there have been 4 consecutive batches older than me who have come to the UFB. One person's come every year. And I heard a lot about the program from my seniors, especially for architects. It was something sort of for them diversifying and leaving architecture. So that was sort of an impetus for me. And then, of course, reading about it, watching the videos online, and I decided this was great. For me, I think I didn't want to stay on in the practice of architecture because I was very disillusioned by both the pedagogy of it as well as sort of overall the practice of how it actually works, like the ground reality of the practice. And I think this was something, at least what the course sounded like to me, was something where I really wanted to push myself almost to be uncomfortable. And this seemed like the space that would provide. I did my thesis on something that explored like the connection between the built as well as policy. And I realized that there was nothing that I knew about policy. I didn't know how to read it. I didn't know how to understand it. And I think the structure of the UFP felt like it was going to talk about these things in a more sort of simplified manner because I felt that if I tried to just sort of put myself out there, it would be very difficult to find sort of even footing for myself. And it seemed like something that I would take a chance with. And I did. And I landed up here. I mean, as an architect, which I don't like to call myself, it, of course, provided a solid base for coming to the UFP because there seem to be a lot of architects here, seem to be a lot of planners and designers. So in that sense, it did sort of align, but it was hugely challenging throughout the last 7 months of actually being here and trying to understand what was going on. Every month of the UFP, I have had an existential crisis of not understanding things. But it gets better. And I think the cycle has repeated every single month as well. But so there's a lot of not knowing, a lot of being uncomfortably challenged all the time, both by the classes, by what I was being taught, as well as the people around me and interactions with them. And I think it was a lot of exposure overall. I feel I'm still trying to figure out exactly how to articulate what the UFP has been for me. And I think that will only happen in retrospect. But currently, I think it has been a place where I learned a lot of things that I would otherwise never have been exposed to, which is always the silver lining. With presentations, I feel as an architect or as a spatial designer, you already have built the skills because you have constant reviews. And I did my architecture was 6 years, so there was a lot of that. But I think with soft skills, because there was a lot of interaction with people from very diverse backgrounds, it just felt like I needed to push myself to almost articulate in ways that were also difficult for me that I didn't know. And for others to be able to understand me and for me to be able to understand them was a little bit of back and forth. But I think we found our space generally. I don't think there was too much of a hybrid. There was just the initial period where we had online classes, and then we transitioned immediately to offline, which was, I think, a really good thing because online classes do tend to become extremely, for lack of a better word, boring. And it's very difficult to concentrate and sort of keep your focus throughout. And especially also in January when, again, during the third wave, we shifted online. There was a little bit of that. I think I found sort of a niche for myself here because even in architecture, I was involved in housing studies and my research was around that. And then coming here, I got involved in 2 projects in rental housing, my practica as well as the project I'm currently working on. And I think that has been sort of the biggest learning for me rather than any of the classes, because working yourself obviously gives you a lot more than ever sitting in a class and listening to someone talk about it. I think overall the course is structured to sort of take you through a journey of first introducing you to the basics, then sort of going in depth, and then sort of involving you based on your particular interests. I think the foundation term did a very good job in exposing me to a lot of different things, a multitude of things, which was great. The commons, I would say, got left a little bit behind in its larger idea of what I wanted to do. That is go in depth, because I felt there were things that didn't completely interest me or didn't fall under the spheres of my at least interest and my abilities and skills as well. But I think shifting now to the elective term and the project term, again, it has been great because we could choose electives based on what interested us. I think that was great because I ended up doing things which sort of aligned to my larger trajectory. I think I would say that because there was also a mix of work that we were doing separate from the classes itself, which was something like practica, which was constantly parallel, going on in parallel to our classes. And I think that especially helped with always helping me refocus to the larger intent of the UFP. So I would say it was balanced. I think, so my group had people from a diverse professional background. So we had a lawyer, we had a social scientist, we had an anthropologist, and 2 architects. And I think in that sense, it was also very difficult to be able to come to common ground. But overall, it was very enjoyable because it also lasted 4 months from September to December. And I think we had 3 presentations for it. And under the sort of guidance of our practical lead as well, it became very comfortable to present the ideas we were thinking about, even though we had very different ideologies and opinions on how things should be. So I think that was a very huge learning curve because we had different expectations of the practica. We had different sort of ideas of how we would represent, how we would actually learn from site. But overall, it did come together. And I felt that was the biggest sort of learning that I've gotten from the UFP, just to be able to interact with people from different professions. I think it grounds you in the reality of what we're actually trying to study. Because through theory classes, it can become very technical and far removed from the ground reality of it. So that it really sort of helps you position yourself in such a way that you have to go sort of talk to people, learn how to talk to people, I think, interact with them in a way that doesn't make either of you uncomfortable, lets you get the information or the data that you need to collect as well. And then sort of come back, zoom out, and put it all together into sort of a cohesive narrative, which is honestly what I think practice is at the end of the day. So I think definitely, because I have not found another program, at least right now, that at least for architects, I'm sure it does, because we are so not exposed to interacting with other professions or other fields, and we're so cocooned in our little bubbles of thinking that we can solve the world's problems by just building, which is such a false reality. And I think in that sense, the UFP really helps you realize that you're not that relevant. So essentially it establishes its own relevance by doing that, which is great. I think for me personally, the internship is a very big jump in the sense of what my initial field of study is, which is architecture, and then sort of for me, I'm going to a place which is a think tank and does a lot of policy research, and that's a huge jump, which wouldn't have been possible without the UFP being this sort of connection. So I think for me, it's a very big jump, but I feel that the overall internship term could be longer because 2 months is very short. So I worked on a project which was looking at the rental housing market, but looking specifically at the unaided low-income shared rental housing providers and trying to do a techno-financial feasibility analysis of their business models. Again, very far removed from anything I would ever do as an architect because it's economics. So I spent the first month actually trying to understand what CapEx and OpEx actually meant, what angel investments or sort of funding meant, and P&L statements. And I think that was, again, a very huge learning curve for me because it just exposed me to something I would never otherwise have worked on, ever. I think the intention is solid to make it a very diverse class. It just so happens that there will always be a mixed crowd always brings its share of tussles and problems. But I think overall it's been, because we also all live together, it has been very fun and very challenging to sort of be with everyone. I would say it's pretty diverse. It could do better in some ways, of course. Yeah, absolutely. I think especially the master classes was something that really expose you to people from very, very sort of high-standing people who have a lot to say. And I think in that sense, it was great to be involved with them. If you are confused and especially don't want to do architecture and want to actually feel like you're relevant in some way and your skills might be relevant in some way, UFP does sound like a good option, but definitely think about what are the trajectories you can. I think one thing that the UFP could do is actually talk about what future trajectories and what like the ground reality of future trajectories is like.